Revelation 2818. From the 20th of July 1943. Men's Incarnation of Christ. The more disenchanted humanity is, the more difficult it will find the right path back, since God's adversary now has great power over it. And at the time of Christ's descent, humanity had reached such a low point that no human being was able to free himself from this power without divine help, which is why God himself confronted his adversary in order to defeat him through the strength of his love and to give people the only means by which they could escape his power. God's adversary had the whole of humanity behind him. God and Jesus faced him alone. And yet the strength of his love was enough to break his power, for love is invincible. It just has to be applied correctly. It has to turn towards the unredeemed. It has to be of divine origin, that is, it must not become self-love and turn towards things which are part of God's adversary. And this true love radiated from Jesus to every human being. Thus Jesus felt the deepest, most merciful love for the suffering humanity under the adversary's spell, and he wanted to help it. Such love had to wrest people from God's adversary and render him powerless, for love was stronger than him and his power. Man as such was no longer able to muster such love in this spiritual state of the whole of humanity. Thus the eternal love embodied itself in a human being who had the will to redeem humanity. This will enabled him to receive eternal love within himself, for his will was always inclined towards good. He detested evil for evil's sake. He was good from the bottom of his heart. He did not seek any advantage. Nothing was calculated, but solely his love for humanity drove him to all thinking, willing and acting. And thus God himself was in him in all fullness, for everything good is God. Every noble thought is God's spiritual emanation, which comes to fruition according to the human being's will, which increases to the deepest wisdom and the ability to accomplish everything the human being wants. God gave himself a human shell in which he wanted to give people an example of what they are capable of if they use their will in the right way. He became a human being himself. He divested himself of all strength and power and lived as a human being in the midst of his living creations. His body completely conformed to the laws of nature to which the human being as such is subject. But he observed one thing. He cultivated love and thereby drew his fellow human beings into the realm of divine emanation of love, for what was grasped by his love was now also grasped by God himself, who was active in him and through him. God took abode in a human shell and sought to change people by exemplifying a life of love to them in order to show them the strength and power of love, to which everything that was subject to God had to submit, thus also forcing the one who had made himself God's adversary through his lack of love and his free will. God became a human being out of love for humanity, which no longer found a path to him in the darkest spiritual night because it disregarded love, which alone leads to God and overcomes God's adversary. Amen.